All right, there we go. Morning, Rob.
Good morning, Kevin. How you
Morning,
doing today?
All right, welcome to Mass Tangent. We're going to talk about some PGS today, Gravity SL PGS. And today we have a special guest with us, Mr. Bruce Jump, the inventor of the Turf Tech Insight tool. As you can see, he's got reference to in his name box there. So, Bruce, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself and share a little bit about your history with Heritage.
Thank you, Mr. Leeper. I have worked with these two guys, Rob and Kevin, for years. Appreciate the invite. My background briefly, I'm the Heritage Products, Professional Products, Turfseed Product Manager. I got into, my education is back at Purdue, Master's in Horticulture. Actually did research on potato breeding back then. I was trying to get individual cells after other people put new genes into potato cells. My job was to make those cells grow into individual plants. Sounds fascinating. It was the most boring job I've ever had. I kept falling asleep next to our growth chambers in the Purdue Horticulture Lab, so I knew that wasn't my future.
Yeah.
Got into sales. I sold my first professional grass seed in 1987. I've been into the grass seed business ever since as a salesperson, calling on golf courses, lawn care operators, sod farms, DOTs, the whole gamut of market segments. Became product manager 2010, 2012 for a company called Winfield, part of Land O'Lakes. And now I am joining Kevin and Rob with this tremendous opportunity with Heritage Professional Products. And Kevin, that's the brief outline of who I am, what I do. I'm here to serve our salespeople who serve our customers. And that's me.
Yeah, you're no stranger to podcasts either. You've been on with our friends at the Fescue Freaks, the Keep Off the Grass podcast. If you haven't seen it, check it out. Bruce does a great job talking about seed labels, how to read them, what are the regulations and restrictions that the seed manufacturers have to follow, and some good stuff over there. So we look forward to hearing your input today on PGS as relates to Heritage products. Rob, do you have any starting points you want to touch on?
Yeah, just a little bit here, Kevin. First of all, I think that we chose the topic. This time of the year is a time of the year when many of our customers and the people that we work with are doing their planning based on what happened last year. So they're planning when they're going to do their overseeding. They're planning on how to do their renovations, how to get the property, the golf course, sports turf, whatever the customer is working in, up better than last year. So PGS is one of those products that allows us to do many of those things, and it's kind of fits into a category that's a little bit overlooked. So Kevin's going to go into kind of the differences of a plant growth regulator and a biostimulant, because both of these categories are becoming very, very common in our industry. And I think it's good to understand that they're very similar, but they are different.
For sure, yeah. So plant growth regulators and biostimulants. Biostimulants come from a lot of different sources. You've got humic, seaweed or kelp extract, protein hydrolysate, some amino acids. These are things that are going to help with growth and development of the plant without affecting any of the pathways of the plant during the growth cycle. Some of the other things, it has an effect on the physical and chemical properties of the soil and the microorganisms in the soil. Versus PGRs come from natural metabolites or synthetic substances, and these are going to regulate the growth and development of plants using active ingredients, and this is going to change the signaling pathway within the plant. One of the unique characteristics about PGRs is that they can be used at very, very low use rates. Some of the other products, the biostimulants, you start getting into some higher use rates when you're mixing up in the tank. So Gravity SL PGS, what is it? It's a three-way mixture of cytokinins, gibberellic acids, and indole butyric acids. Indole butyric acids are also known as auxins. So if we mention auxins at some point in the podcast, we're referencing indole butyric acid. So I'm going to read a couple of things here about these because there's some good information here. So cytokinins are a class of plant hormones that promote cell division or cytokinesis in plant roots and shoots. Cytokinins are involved primarily in cell growth and differentiation, but also affect apical dominance, axillary bud growth, and leaf senescence. So all good stuff there. The next one, gibberellins control major aspects of plant growth such as germination, elongation growth, flower development, and flowering time. And lastly, indole butyric acid is an auxin that specifically enhances root formations or adventitious roots. On top of this, it has also been proven to increase flower growth and crop yield in both fruits and vegetables. It has been used throughout the history to protect plants during transplant. This is all good things to put together. The loading or the ratio that all these products are included in the mixture is very important as well in determining the benefit of use or the resulting plant growth and development. So Gravity SL PGS is a cytokinin dominant mixture and is a 2-to-1 ratio with the auxins. This means there are many types of auxins and gibberellins as well, which affect the plant at different sites of action within the signaling pathway. And so ours is 2-to-1. We have 0.09% cytokinin to 0.045% indole butyric acid. So ours is cytokinin dominant. So we're going to get some more of those characteristics versus the IBA. That's a lot of technical information there. A little bit of the brief history of the product. So this product was brought to Winfield and acquired as a finished product overall. And so it kind of came to Winfield and they were like, what do we do with the product? They had to do a lot of research on the ag side to kind of figure out where's the product best going to fit in the sales with our customers being ag customers, corn and soybeans. And through a lot of research, what they found is that this product worked best at planting. So they ended up being able to treat the seeds with Gravity SL PGS. So that we were, as PPG, we were with Winfield at the time. Winfield Ag is doing all this research. They have a lot of really good information about this product works really well as a seed treatment. And they come to us and they start saying, this is how it's working for us. Maybe you guys should try it as a seed treatment on Turfseed. And so that kind of leads us to where we started with the product and we have some really good information here. So starting as a seed treatment, really great place to start with the journey of the product Gravity SL PGS when you're talking to a customer or when you're thinking about how to use the product. And so, Rob, what are your thoughts on PGS as a seed treatment, whether you're applying our liquid PGS when you're after putting seed down or on seed as a treatment?
I mean, I really think from the experiences that I've had is that I think we get better overall immediate germination. And if you look at the characteristics in the plant physiology of each of those hormones, each of those components in PGS, they're affecting everything at that initial germination stage. So they're affecting the, starting the root growth, starting the shoot growth. So that seedling has a head start. And that's what I've seen in, I've used the product to soak and germinate some seeds that we weren't putting a coating on, had very good germination, establishment, and mortality rates with those seeds that I was working with. So I think it highlights the vigor that we want to have at the seedling stage. It speeds up the germination and helps us germinate grass seed quicker. And I think when you talk to superintendents, sports turf managers, even lawn care specialists, they want to germinate as fast as possible. They want to go out and do a renovation, do a new seeding, a hydro seed mix, etc. And they want to have it germinate as fast as possible. When people ask us about our seed blends, that's one of the questions. Well, how fast is this going to germinate? They want an idea of the time, and we can reduce that time down just by using the PGS on the seed. So, and then also increasing root establishment. I think one of the biggest things with grass seed is that if we get good early root establishment, we're more likely to survive those early couple of weeks where the seed has a small root system. It's trying to put out some shoot growth. It's draining the energy that it had in the seedling that started in the seed. Because remember, a seed is a living organism. And so all of those things are very beneficial for establishing grass seed. So again, we want to get a little bit back to Bruce. As our turf seed specialist for Heritage PPG, maybe you can give us a little more insight and background into how we ended up and how we've been so successful with our seed blends here at Heritage PPG.
Couple things, Rob, you're spot on. One thing to Kevin's point about the history of it, we have 3 active ingredients or 3 products that go into PGS. It's not like you just take 3 products and put them in a bucket and stir them up and then you spray something with it, you know? And Kevin knows this, Rob knows this, we all know this. This is a piece of technology. The trick with the SL is figuring out how to get those 3 products stable. Everything has a half-life in the world of agronomy, horticulture, and turfgrass. You got to get the half-life extended longer by the formulations we use. And that was a real trick. It took a lot of time and a lot of money to figure that out. Kevin, I believe we are talking a shelf life in the liquid of 2 or 3 years now, as opposed to weeks or months, which is remarkable. So,
and that wasn't the case with the original formulation, correct, Bruce? The original formulation was much less stable in the jug.
You had to get it in the tank on the seed. It worked, but growers did not like that because of the timing issues and the storage issues. And took a lot of time and money to figure out that whole process on how to do that. First, so that's number one. Number two, I'm seeing, and we share our data, so I'm seeing the same results Rob and Kevin are seeing. We've had tall fescue treated with PGS up in 3 or 4 days. That's not everywhere, but that is under ideal conditions. The PGS even enhances that seedling vigor and that establishment. One thing I would just add to Rob's comments, PGS works all times of the year when plants are actively growing and seeds are germinating. Its sweet spot, the lane, if you will, of PGS is when seeds are under stress, when they're planted under stress, high temperature, low temperature, dry soils, wet soils. That's where PGS shines. So we did initial research at the University of Minnesota, looking at temperature ranges, looking at moisture ranges. Yes, it works when conditions are ideal. When they're not ideal, that's when you need PGS. When there's stress, disease stress, traffic stress. I mean, all of these stress factors, when the pH is off, when the soil's texture is bad, when the phosphorus is tied up and the plant can't get any, that's where where PGS really shines. So that would be my 1 point. Couple data points, Kevin. On tall fescue, I'm looking at research results from the University of Minnesota. PGS treated seed on tall fescue established significantly different from untreated seed. 77% was germinated after 35 days versus about 70%. So a 7% difference. After 13 days on tall fescue, treated was 21% germinated, untreated 6% germinated.
Wow.
The same thing for perennial ryegrass. Treated at what was it, 34.8%. And 57% germination, and it was only 55% for other ryegrasses. Same thing on bentgrass. There's a 10-point spread on germination percentages on bentgrass, and these were tested at low temperatures and high temperatures and different moisture conditions. So the conclusions University of Minnesota drew from this gravity PGS seed treatment showed significant increase in germination of all cool season grasses tested under cool germination temperatures when moisture was present. These results indicate gravity PGS treated seed to be used in cool season grasses to increase the speed and rate of germination, and they say in adverse conditions. That was their conclusions. So Rob is absolutely right. I would just emphasize the job of a turfgrass manager is understanding the current situation you're facing and what does the ideal situation look like? Agronomic, environmental. Managers try to get as close to that ideal state as they can. And it's a real challenge to do that because we're faced with so many adverse conditions, especially in the urban environment with heat sinks and concrete and asphalt and everything else. So, conclusion, Kevin, if you're dealing with stress on seeding, and who doesn't deal with stress, that's where PGS shines.
So thankfully, we've got a couple of things to help combat stress, and especially when it comes to picking your bag of seed. So Bruce, you created the Turf Tech tool. This is a really important tool that turf managers can use when determining what is the best variety for their situation. We've got all the data going back. We've got all the different characteristics that people might be looking for. You can take that information, throw it into your charts, and determine these are the best varieties that we want to sell. Now we're actually going to put PGS on it and make it work even better for the turf manager. Can you explain the process of maybe how the Turf Tech idea started, and then when we get to putting PGS on Turfseed with the manufacturers, where did that idea come from? Was it because we can treat seed with the liquid? Our customers could go out right now and throw some PGS in like a cement mixer or on a wheelbarrow with some Turfseed and mix it up themselves. But we've simplified the process. Now it's on all of our Turfseed.
Yep. So we treat all of our seed with PGS, every seed we can treat, which is most of them. Oh man, I mean, to do this, Kevin, we need another podcast. But
we're going to have another podcast with the Turf Tech tool for sure.
Give you the abbreviated version. It literally started in a Starbucks in Fort Wayne, Indiana, in 2005.
That's when it started,
Of course.
See, to think turf grass like the three of us, you got to get the right level of caffeine in you. You've got to get that right. That's the ideal state, Rob. So you got to get it.
So Bruce was 3 quads into the day when he was working on the Turf Tech tool idea.
And I have been doing selling seed, and I want to give my customers, the landscape contractors, the golf course superintendents, the highest performing seed I can. That's what they're asking for, right? That's what they want.
Right, exactly.
And I would go to a lot of the manufacturer reps who sell seed. Hey, give me your best stuff. Tall fescue, Rise, Blues. Here's our best stuff. And this is back in the early 2000s. And I'm walking across, Rob, a perennial ryegrass lawn in northern Indiana in late August that doesn't have enough nitrogen on it. And my shoes are covered with orange little pustule things all over them. It's like, I thought you told me this was rust resistant. Well, it is. Well, why is my shoes orange?
Right.
It just happens over and over again. So I began finding out about the National Turfgrass Evaluation Program, NTEP.org. It's the world's largest database. And I became pretty good with Excel. So I began, downloading all those files. This is when it wasn't online, guys. I know, Kevin, this is before your time, but they used to have booklets where they had all of this stuff published, these rows and columns. And I still have a couple of these books, So that's what they had. So I just began extracting this data and looking at the best varieties, for, these regions and everything, species. And I had this experiment at Starbucks. Gee, I wonder if I could just download the entire tall fescue database. There's hundreds and hundreds and thousands and millions of databases or of data points. And I thought this through over coffee. I thought, I bet I could do that. And that's what I did. It took me until about 2010. Doing this in the evenings and weekend. I had a full-time job working with you two. And in 2015, I built some algorithms. They're actually simple. They are algorithms, but they're simple. Became patented in 2015. Heritage owns 3 patents for the Turf Tech tool. Here's what it does in the simplest of terms. And as Kevin said, we're going to go through this in a separate podcast. It was I believe the 2016 tall fescue trial on brown patch, but you got to have brown patch resistance for tall fescue. I think there were about 9, let's just call it 10, make the numbers round, 10 state trials on brown patch disease that the NTEP people want to run. And these are the land grant universities who run these trials. It's peer-reviewed, replicated, randomized data, and they got a whole process on collecting it. So tall fescue, brown patch, 10 state trials. It's difficult to go through there and try to find what varieties are the highest performing. What Turf Tech does in its simplest terms, I'm getting to the point, is it looks at state number 1 and says, is this tall fescue variety a top performer in state number 1? That's the question, yes or no. Then it looks at state number 2, then state number 3, and asks the same question 10 times. And it comes up with a rating, which is a percentage. Did you make the top performing group? Meaning you are significantly different in resistance to brown patch. There's less brown patch lesions on those plots. That's what it does. If you made the top group in all 10 states, you're 10 out of 10, your turf performance index score, TPI, is 100. You're 10 out of 10. And by the way, how many do you think make 10 out of 10?
Probably none of them.
One or two, maybe.
Because that's really hard for a variety, isn't it? You got to make number 1 at Purdue, at Indiana, then you got to make it at Ohio State, then you got to make it at Iowa, then you got to make it over at Cornell, then you got to make it up at East Lansing in Michigan. Are those environmental, agronomic, and the way they water and manage the same? No, they're all different. They're all different. If you can have the lowest amount of brown patch in all 10 states, that's a big deal. That's a big deal. If you're 9 out of 10, you get a 90%. 8 out of 10, you get an 80%. 0 out of 10, you didn't make the top group one time, you get a big red 0 on the chart. That in its simplest form is what it is. And then you go through that with all the attributes, and in the latest tall fescue trials, you're looking at about 48 to 50 different attributes for all those states. And the algorithms just sum it all up. And it gives you a beautiful chart. So the highest percentages mean you made the top performing group the highest percentage of the time. Now, the best varieties, which that's what we use, to Rob's point. How do we choose varieties? Most people just let the seed vendor choose it. How does the seed vendor choose it? Well, whatever the growers grew and what they yield and what's in their warehouse. That's kind of how the system works. I don't like it. We don't like it. That's not the way Heritage operates. We use this data to be able to go to our vendors and tell them this is what we want. Any comments or questions, Rob or Kevin?
No, I think Bruce, that was a great explanation, and it kind of leads into our next topic a little bit about PGS, where PGS being used throughout the remainder of the growing season. So we're putting it on seed. We're choosing the best seed that is being evaluated for all of these stress factors, and then PGS, because of it being more cytokinin specific product, that's going to help us with our summer growth. So all those stresses that you're talking about, once the turf is established, they now continue to have those same exact stresses. So they're going to go through drought stress. They're going to go through traffic, and we're going to be able to utilize PGS throughout the remainder of the season to help the plant deal with those stresses. And I think that's really important to look at. We utilize PGS to get the turf up out of the ground, to capitalize on all these attributes and these traits that you focused on. But now we're going to use it to maintain good, healthy turf, because the majority of our turf grass that we deal with, it's either in a golf course situation. So we have play, we have low mowing height, we have drought conditions, we have salt issues. All these things are making the turf less, it has less strength overall than if it was in a perfect environment. The other thing that we have going on is we have soil temperatures coming up. And in the spring, cytokinin production is at its maximum. So that's why we see the turf. We go out and we see it put through its fertilization application in the spring. Soil temperatures come up. The plant starts producing cytokinins. Boom, we get a big boost of shoot growth. Well, then the soil temperatures start to rise. They continue to grow. We get into late June, early July, and all of a sudden the soil temperatures, because of how they affect the plant, start to lower our cytokinin production. So we don't have enough cytokinin production to have good shoot growth. So by supplementing it with PGS, we can continue to maintain those stresses. So all these situations that we deal with, whether it's lawn care, sports turf, golf, all this turf plants throughout the country, especially like you mentioned in the transition zone, they're under stress, and we have the ability to help combat that stress with PGS. So I think it ties in why we choose our seed, but then why we continue to utilize PGS throughout the entire rest of the growing season.
We've all seen really good results with PGS in a variety of different situations, whether it's on a golf course, putting green, in a fairway, on sports turf, on the middle of a football field where there's the most compaction and turf ripped out, 300-pound guys running around pushing all the soil down, just destroying the turf. Seen great results with guys adding PGS to their program, going out on a regular basis every 3 weeks or so, and putting this down to help aid in recovery, lateral growth of the turf, get some better spread in thin areas, whether it's cart traffic, in one spot where you haven't moved your ropes or changed your signs around, or it's right next to the green, people always stopping and starting and walking on the green there. We know that it works. We know that there's a lot of great results out there in a lot of different situations. And one thing that's important to touch on is that there's no benefit in going above and beyond the use rates. This is a very low use rate product, but there's no benefit if you were to go out at, 20 ounces per acre. Let's keep it at, the 4.5 to 6.5, 7 ounce per acre rate.
And at those rates you're talking about, Kevin, it's a very economical product for management. And I think that's key. And, since we are teasing out little ideas today, one of the things that Kevin and I have been working on is to put PGS onto fertilizer. So we not only would have it on the seed, but then we'd have it on a fertilizer carrier. So for those people, for those lawn care situations, sports turf managers, fairways, where it's hard to spray these large areas, we're going to have it on a fertilizer carrier that will be able to continually get those small amounts of PGS out into our programs for stress management.
This is my first podcast, but if I were to summarize what you two just said, I would frame it up in kind of like a three-legged stool. We got three legs. One is genetics. That's where the Turfseed is coming in. One is nutrition. Plants have to have nutrients. There's required nutrients. Mm-hmm. Then the third leg is like a plant health leg with plant growth regulators. This is where you're eliminating pests, weeds, insects, diseases, kind of a plant health leg. Those all work in unison and getting those balanced based on what stresses the managers, turfgrass managers, are seeing. It's kind of like a 3-point framework.
So just to also introduce some of our ornamental customers to PGS, this has been trialed in ornamental settings as well. A lot of our sales reps on the ornamental side do great work, even landscape, as well as the nurseries and growers. But PGS does really well at growth of the flowers and the plant itself. So if you have transplant situations where you're taking ornamental trees, shrubs, flowers, and putting them in the ground, making a PGS application, as well as throwing in one of our other products, Gravity L Amp, they do a really great job together at just kind of making the best of the plant when you put it into a different setting. So there's a couple other key selling points that, Rob, you've come up with. Do you want to walk us through those?
Sure, Kevin. I'm looking at some of the data that we have that and having some conversations and watching some information that we had from the formulators at Winfield Agriculture, one of the main things, again, Kevin had mentioned this earlier, the ratio of auxins to cytokinins is such that we get very good shoot growth early on, and that continues throughout the entire growing season when the plant is under stress. We can utilize this to more efficiently manage the stress, and so it allows the plant to, when it can't produce these hormones and these compounds, to be able to get them into their tissue. So again, very small amounts, repetitive applications. Kevin did mention the ornamentals, and that's one of the areas where I started actually utilizing PGS when it was still back in the early days when we called it Ascend. And I live here in Colorado, so I deal, and I've done a lot of work in the ornamental market, exterior tree care market. And anybody that knows anything about Colorado, we have poor soils, we have high pH water, we have cold, snowy winters, which we're experiencing right now, and then we have drought all summer and hot conditions. So really hard on our ornamental population. I started putting PGS into my deep root drenches with some other products. What we found was that we had a very beneficial effect on the nutritional products, our traditional NPK products in those tank mixes. And then also I was adding in some humates and some kelp and some other natural biostimulants, like Kevin mentioned earlier, creating a program that when we looked at the overall growth of our ornamentals that were very much under stress because of our climate and our conditions here in Colorado, we were seeing good candle growth from our evergreens, good new growth from our deciduous trees. And that's something that we do it a couple times a year, but we were getting very good beneficial effects from a very small amount of PGS. And then one of the other things that we also want to always mention is that we did change the formulation with PGS. It was a water-based formulation. Now it's a propylene glycol-based formulation. That allows us to stabilize those three ingredients so that, and again, Winfield Ag, because of the amount of testing that they do, they looked at competitive products that are not in the correct formulation, and what it says on the jug is not what's in the jug after a very small period of time. So we have a very stable product. So when we tell you this is the ratio of these three ingredients in our formulation, we know that that's the formulation. That's going to be the ratio a year, 2 years down the line. So we rotate this product so much that we rarely have inventory. We're actually waiting for a batch to be made right now, in all honesty. And so we know that our product is stable. That's not the case with some of the competition. So we have a product that we know what's in the jug, we know the ratio in the jug, and we know how it's going to perform based on that ratio of the cytokinins to the auxins. So, I mean, those are some good selling points, some good information on why the product is superior and how it can be used in all these different markets. And we can use it in ornamentals, turf germination, hydroseeding. And, Kevin and I talked about it when we started putting the presentation together for the podcast. We could use it in every single segment that we work in now. And that's something that's not the case with a lot of our products. They're very, very segment specific products.
As well as throughout the season. And I think that's
exactly
the best part about the product. You get it. If you need to put some seed down, it's on our seed. If you need to put it down, after that throughout the season as part of a program, it's totally fine to do that as well. And we probably recommend that. And that's not a selling, I'm not just saying that as a sales rep. This is a product that we know is going to add benefit to the plant throughout the season as well, especially like Rob discussed with cytokinins not being produced as much as the season progresses into the warmer times of the year. So that was it. Bruce, what are your final thoughts here?
I think just to summarize, PGS is a great product. It can be used in virtually every seed situation you are faced with. The stuff works. It's got research backing it. That takes time and money. Not, a lot of companies don't do that. We took the time and money to do it. It's a great product. I would recommend it. and be thinking about, seed in a management system. Genetics are important. Still got to apply nutrients, got to apply, the proper plant health products, but genetics matter.
And I think we do have some charts and sheets that we can add to the podcast. We'll get producer Susie to work on that in the meantime. And those should be searchable on our website, or, get in touch with your Heritage PPG sales rep area manager, and we can help provide some of that information as well.
Perfect.
Cool. Thank you all for watching.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.